The story of Arai's awakening. In a quiet mountain village where mist kissed the rooftops every dawn, there lived a young man named Arai. He was known for his politeness, hard work, and his constant smile. But behind that smile was a restless heart. Every day, Arai lived for others, for his boss, his parents, his friends, even strangers. If someone frowned at him, his heart would sink. If someone praised him, he felt alive for a moment, then empty again. He longed for approval like a man lost in the desert longs for water. One night, after another exhausting day trying to please everyone, Arai sat by the river and whispered to himself, "I'm tired of living for everyone but me." That was when an old fisherman sitting nearby spoke without turning his head. "There's a philosopher in the hills," the man said. "They say he helps people find peace. But be warned, he doesn't tell you what you want to hear. He tells you what you need to hear." Something stirred in Arai's heart. The next morning, he packed some food, took a walking stick, and began his climb up the mountain. The meeting. The philosopher lived in a small wooden house surrounded by pine trees and the sound of birds. He greeted Arai with kind eyes that seemed to look right through him. "I've come to learn how to be happy," Arai said. The philosopher smiled. "Then first you must learn how to be free." "Free?" Arai asked. "I already am." "Not if you live for others' approval," said the old man. "Then your heart is in their hands." And so began a long conversation that would change Arai's life. Lesson 1. You are not your past. For days, Arai told the philosopher stories about his childhood, how his father criticized him, how teachers compared him to others, how fear held him back. The philosopher listened quietly and said, "You believe your past made you who you are. But what if your life is not shaped by what happened to you, but by the meaning you give it?" Arai frowned. "But isn't it true that our experiences control us?" "No," said the philosopher. "You are not driven by your past. You are pulled by your goals. If you want to be loved, you may act weak. If you want to avoid failure, you may not try. Change your goal and you change your life." That night, Arai couldn't sleep. He stared at the stars and thought, maybe my past didn't trap me. Maybe I've been trapping myself. Lesson 2. All problems are interpersonal problems. The next morning, the philosopher asked, "What makes you unhappy?" Arai said, "People. They judge me. They talk behind my back. They never appreciate what I do." The philosopher smiled softly. "Then your peace depends on their mood. Isn't that slavery of the soul?" He continued, "When you compare yourself to others, you are telling yourself, I must be better to have value. But value is not something given to you by others, it is something you already have." For the first time, Arai began to see how he was fighting invisible battles every day, battles for attention, for recognition, for love. And those battles were stealing his happiness. Lesson 3. Separate your tasks. A few days later, the philosopher pointed to a young tree outside. "That tree grows quietly," he said. "It does not worry about being admired. Its only task is to grow. Whether people call it beautiful or ugly, that's not its task." He turned to Arai. "Your task is to act with honesty and kindness. But whether others accept or reject you, that is their task, not yours." Those words hit Arai like lightning. He realized how much of his energy was wasted trying to control things that weren't his responsibility, others' opinions, moods, and judgments. From that day, whenever he felt anxious, he whispered to himself, "That's not my task." And slowly, he began to feel free. Lesson 4. The courage to be normal. One evening, as they watched the sunset, Arai said, "All my life, I've wanted to be special. I thought being admired would make me happy." The philosopher smiled. Everyone wants to be special. But that desire is another form of comparison. True joy is not in being special, it is in finding meaning in ordinary life. He poured Arai a cup of tea. Even making tea for another person with sincerity can be a moment of peace. Arai watched the steam rise and felt something soften inside him. He began to see beauty in the small things, the morning light on the fields, laughter with neighbors, helping an old woman carry water. He no longer needed to stand out. It was enough to simply be present, kind, and real. Lesson 5. The courage to be disliked. When it was time to leave, Arai felt grateful but uncertain. "What if I live this way and people don't like me?" he asked. The philosopher looked into his eyes. "Then you will know what it means to be free. Living truthfully means some will not understand you. But remember, their dislike is not a reflection of your worth. It is simply proof that you are living your own life." Arai's transformation. When Arai returned to the village, people noticed a change. He still worked hard, but he no longer rushed to please everyone. He said no when needed, spoke honestly, and smiled from the heart, not because he wanted approval, but because he was at peace. Some said he had become strange. Others said he had become wise. But Arai didn't mind either way. He had finally learned that peace doesn't come from being liked, it comes from liking yourself. And on quiet nights, as the stars glowed over the mountain, he would whisper with a smile, "This is freedom. This is happiness. This is the courage to be disliked."